and my gosh, I feel like I don't really know how to talk anymore. When we go back outside after all of this, I'm gonna have to figure out how to speak again, I feel like. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is just going to be me talking through the 6 books that I've read so far this year. Yeah, so I had intended to do a January wrap up, a February wrap up, a March wrap up, and now it's April. So, and like no wrap ups have been done. So, we are just gonna do an amalgamation, like I guess it's become a quarterly wrap up. Yeah, just had to do the maths real quick. Quarterly wrap up. Anyway. Yeah, so I have actually been taking a very relaxed approach to my reading this year, hence why I've only read 6 books, and I'm actually in between like another 6, I think. Like I've literally started several books and just not finished them. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the books that I actually have read. Okay, I have got a list. Let's go. So, and I have some stats. I don't normally do stats, but I'm gonna do them today because I just feel like it. So, as I said, I have read 6 books so far this year. Of those 6 books, 4 have been audiobooks, 1 has been an ebook, and 1 has been a physical book. Yeah. So, shall we dive in? So, the first book that I finished this year was Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. So, this book is written in verse, and it's literally, you can't see anything. Wow. It's literally a handful of words per page. Like, I don't know how to hold this up in a way that makes sense, so I'm gonna just show you like this. So it's written in verse, and to my knowledge I've not actually read any other books that are written in verse, none that I can remember anyway, and it's the kind of book that you can read in one sitting if you really want to, but I read it over a couple of days. And it's about a boy who is basically looking to avenge his brother's murder. His brother dies in the beginning of the book, so he lives in a block of flats and he gets in a lift, and as he comes down, at each floor that the lift stops at, somebody who has lost their life to gun violence gets into the lift. And obviously there's like an element of suspension of disbelief because these people are dead. So their ghosts, their spirits, like whatever. And each one of them basically, I guess they like sort of plead their case to him, or not so much as plead their case, but like they basically present an argument for why he doesn't need to kill this person without saying it so much, if that makes sense. It's like they sort of put the facts out there to help him make a decision one way or the other, to make him think. I don't want to talk too much about the book because it is such a quick read, and I do feel like the less you know, the better. It's a really short but powerful book, and I really enjoyed it. And one thing actually that I really quite like about this book is that it seems to be written for male teenagers, specifically black male teenagers. A lot of YA is geared, at least in my opinion, I would say a lot of YA is geared towards female readers, whereas this book has a male protagonist. One thing I think the book does really well is makes the reader think about how a person's life experiences shape them and the way that they think and act. I feel like a lot of behaviours can seem random and like they don't make any sense or seem really extreme, but everything to some degree makes sense. Like the more you get to know a person, the more you understand them and the things that they've been through, the more you can understand how they view the world and how they behave. And to me, I would say that this book really strengthens that viewpoint, that behaviours aren't random and that they are informed by past experiences and beliefs and stuff. Yeah, I think it's a really good book. I would highly recommend it. I gave it 4 stars ultimately. So then the next book that I read was Push by Sapphire, and that was an audiobook. The movie Precious is actually based off of this book. I've actually only seen like half of Precious so far, and reading this book has made me want to go back, like revisit it, watch it properly. This book, first of all, was very, very heavy. Like the subject matter was intense. It's a book that you have to go into with your eyes wide open. It's a book that came out like 22, 23 years ago, I think, like 96 or 97. From what I've seen on Goodreads, a lot of people read it in school, and I actually do wish that I had read it in school because it's the kind of book that needs unpacking and would be a really good one to discuss. So as I said, it is quite heavy and it deals with child sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, rape, incest, children born out of incest. Homophobia is in there as well. There's a lot in this book. It's a really good book, but it's not a book that you read for enjoyment. Like, it's quite intense. It shines a light on like the ugliest parts of society. Precious's life just sucks. It sucks. Reading this book made me really grateful for my own upbringing and just, I guess, the normalcy. I always forget. It's a really horrific book. It's very thought-provoking, but it's very heavy on intense subjects. Like, Precious is a person that society is just completely uninterested in. She's more than fallen through the cracks. She's basically illiterate. She's in middle school still when she should be in high school. Like, when she had the first child by her father, more should have been done, but it wasn't, and she got to the point where she's having a second child with her dad, and it's just like, one thing I didn't mention is that it's set in Harlem in the 1980s, and there was a crack epidemic during that time, and also an AIDS epidemic. Those two things are relevant to the story. Precious is basically unwanted, unloved, uncared for. Thing after thing just consistently happens to her. When you think it can't get worse, it gets worse. It is not an easy read, like, whatsoever. It forces you to pay attention to the fact that some people have had the odds stacked against them from day dot, and they haven't had the luxury of having a normal, healthy, happy upbringing. It's another book that I do recommend, but not one that I would recommend to everyone because of the sensitive subject matter. But I did ultimately give it 4 stars. So the next book I read was the ebook, and that was If There's No Tomorrow by Jennifer L. Armentrout. So If There's No Tomorrow is a book about drink driving, essentially. Our main character is called Lena, and her best friend is called Sebastian. Her male best friend is called Sebastian. She has 2 other best friends, Abby and Megan. There's a car accident on the night before everybody's meant to go back to school for their senior year. It kills 4 people, and Lena is the only survivor. And the book basically is about how she deals with that and the guilt that she places on herself and everything. I thought that that was a really interesting premise because drink driving is quite the issue. I was interested enough to pick up the book. I didn't like this book, really. I gave it 2 stars ultimately. I feel like it just really missed the mark for me. I feel like it was a swing and a miss. I didn't connect with Lena at all. I felt like the book started off reasonably well. Like, I wasn't hooked from the beginning, but I had a level of interest that just slowly waned. I got to about 75% of the way through the book when I lost interest completely, and I felt like just not finishing it, but I was so far into it that I figured, like, whatever, we're here, let me just finish it. I read The Problem with Forever by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and I really liked that book, so I figured, let me see what else she's written. And that's when I came across The Problem with Forever and decided to read that. But yeah, I didn't enjoy it nearly as much as I enjoy The Problem with Forever. Drink driving is a sensitive issue, and I don't know that I love how it was handled in this book. My stance on it personally is like cut and dry. If you've had a drink, don't drive. Simple. I don't care if you've had 1, 2, just don't drive. You know, in the age of Uber, not Zoom, that's a video app. What's the other one? Bolt. In the age of all of these driving apps, cabs, trains, whatever, there is literally no reason for you to get behind the wheel if you've had a drink. None. No reason. Nothing makes sense. Nothing is worth the risk. There is like a legal amount of alcohol you can have in your system and safely drive. But my question is, do you have a breathalyzer? How do you know how much alcohol is in your body? How do you know how your body metabolizes alcohol? There's just too many questions. It's just not worth the risk. Just don't do it. She beat herself up a lot because she hadn't been drinking. Or rather, she had been drinking, but she'd sobered up because she hadn't had a drink in a while, and the others in the car had drunk way more than her. She felt guilty over not insisting that she drive over the guy that ended up driving. And to be honest with you, I agreed with her. She should feel guilty. She wasn't the one that crashed the car, but she was sober enough to know that the guy driving the car shouldn't have driven the car. I just feel like the way the story went just made it really difficult for me to empathize with Lena. Like, really, really difficult, because I felt like her actions were stupid and irresponsible. I didn't vibe with it at all. There were like several things about this story that I just didn't like. I didn't like Sebastian and Lena as a couple. Just, it didn't make sense to me. It felt really forced. I didn't understand either how he was always reaching out to grab a single strand of her hair. Like, why? I feel like once or twice, sure, like just offhand, but it felt like a thing that he just regularly did, and I just didn't get it. Just thought it was odd. And also, his jaw was hard like 60% of the time. He was just always tensing his jaw, and it's just like, why? He has a chiseled jaw, we get it, but why is it forever tensed? Like, and he bit his lip so much, too much. Enough. stop, we get it, he's paying, calm down. He bit his lips so many times, I don't know how he didn't just bite right through it. And another thing that annoyed me, right, her friend Abby, when she was angry, her nostrils were always flaring, and I just feel some type of way about a black character when they're angry being described as having their nostrils flaring. Like, there's something about it that just really grates on me. I also wasn't so big on Lena finding out the reason why her dad really left, because it was built up as this thing for so much of the book, and when she finally found out why, it was really anticlimactic. And even when she found out, she was still hanging on to this previous idea that she had, and it's like, look, we've laid it out pretty clear for you, like, this is what happened, but you can't move past your idea or your belief around what happened. Like, let it go. The facts have been laid out, especially because of how she'd been behaving towards her dad for years. Like, it just seemed ridiculous when the truth finally came out. Even when the truth has finally come out, because things are kind of murky at that point between her and Sebastian, she still says that she's a coward just like her dad, even though we found out that her dad wasn't a coward at all. Like, I know that Lena doesn't want to be open with her friends and family about why she specifically is having such a hard time with dealing with the accident, but that whole plotline just drags on endlessly. It's just, we're beating the same drum, we're saying the same things, and it's just really mundane. At 3/4 through the book, it's still kind of a half secret, and it's just annoying at that point. And a pet peeve that I had is how much it's mentioned that Lena eats. Eating food is not a personality trait. I didn't connect with the 4 that died, and I feel like that was kind of the clincher for me, because that's what the whole thing was about, like these 4 teenagers losing their lives as a result of drink driving. And I feel like the same character was brought up whenever they were mentioned. And the one thing about this character, well, the only thing about this character even, is that she ate chicken nuggets and watched Dance Moms. I feel like that's the only thing that's really mentioned. We don't have a complete picture of the 4 that died, so it's really hard to connect to them, because what do we know about them? They didn't feel like real people, and granted they were dead for more of the book than they were alive for, but it was just so two-dimensional. It was horrible that they died, especially how they died, but I wasn't grieving them alongside Lena. It didn't hit me hard enough. The book kind of had me in the first half and then just lost me completely by the time you were in the second half. Another thing, Lena just doesn't listen very well, specifically with one thing. Like, she's told that her mum isn't struggling as much financially anymore, but she won't let go of saying that they can't afford certain things. And then as well, like, she's told why her parents split up, but she still won't let go of what she thought previously. It's like, just listen to what's being said, Lena. Just pay attention. Overall, I just feel like the book was entirely forgettable and just missed the mark completely. The next book that I read was another audiobook, and it was Margarita's Marzipan and Murder by Harper Lynn. It's the 3rd book in a series in the Cape Bay Murder Mystery series. To me, it's the kind of book that you would read on holiday, like sitting by the pool or on the beach or something. They're easy, light reads. It's the 3rd in the series, so I can't say too much about it. But basically, somebody's killed in town, and Fran goes about trying to solve it, which is what she does in every book. I started this series last year. They're kind of middle of the road for me. They're not amazing, but they're not terrible. They're just easy and quick reads, which is why I feel like I keep reading them. I wouldn't go out of my way to recommend them, but I also wouldn't not recommend them. I know that's a double negative, but just stay with me here. They're alright, they're decent, they're okay. Nothing to write home about, but I'm not going to give them a super negative review either. Okay, so 2 more books to talk about. The 5th book that I read this year was another audiobook, and that one was I actually am not too sure on the title, but it's a collection of short stories about Willie and Elvira. They're written by Mary Higgins Clark. Willie and Elvira are these middle-aged New Yorkers. Excuse me. They're middle-aged New Yorkers who won the lottery. Basically, they just keep on finding themselves in wacky situations that tend to feature murder, but at least feature a crime of some sort, and Elvira sets about trying to solve them. I was actually quite surprised by how much I enjoyed these books. I just feel like Willie and Elvira are just... they're cool characters. I like them. I've realised as well, I like books where... I've not read too many of them, but I like the idea of characters winning the lottery and like seeing what comes of that, I guess. I just really like them as characters. I actually first read a story featuring them at the end of last year. There's not a whole lot to say about it. It was a surprising hit for me, basically. I gave the collection 4 stars. There were some stories that I liked more than others, but overall came to about 4 stars for me. Okay. Let me just have a bit of water, my throat is getting dry. So the final book that I want to talk about is Becoming by the one and only Michelle Obama. I am a big fan of the Obamas. Love those guys. I feel like the word inspirational is overused sometimes. It can be thrown around willy-nilly, but the one word that comes to mind when I think of Michelle Obama is inspirational. She's just dope. I love her. She's been in really exceptional circumstances and just comes across as the most normal, down-to-earth, warm, intelligent, funny person. She was literally the first lady of the United States of America, and yet she comes across as really relatable and personable and just human. I didn't pay attention to politics whatsoever. I mean, I still barely pay attention to politics, but I really didn't pay attention before Michelle and Barack Obama were in the White House. I mean, I was fairly young when he got inaugurated. It was like 2008? Yeah, 2008. So I was like 13, yeah. But I really stood up and paid attention because, hello, first black president and first black first lady of America. Like, everybody paid attention to that, you know? Okay, this is all over the gaff, so let me like backpedal a little bit. Becoming basically charts Michelle Obama's life from when she was Michelle Robinson. It starts with her childhood in the south side of Chicago in a masonette flat above her great aunt and uncle. She lived with her parents and her older brother, and her dad had a disability. He had multiple sclerosis. And she tells her story from her childhood in the south side of Chicago through to the White House and slightly beyond. So in the very, very beginning of the book, in the prologue, she's in their new house that they move into after leaving the White House. And then the book sort of backpedals to the beginning, the middle, and then the White House. She details various moments in her life, from growing up in the south side of Chicago in a working class family, to her experiences of loss, her experience of having a father with a disability. She sort of had a one-track mind and was always focused on pursuing law, and then once she got there and was a qualified lawyer, how she realized that she didn't want to be. And of course she obviously talks about meeting and marrying Barack Obama. She talks about the difficulties that they faced within their marriage. She's also talked about her experiences with IVF. She even talks about how she wasn't and still kind of really isn't a fan of politics, and how she wasn't really for Barack pursuing politics. She talks about her experiences with his various campaigns, and also what it's like finding yourself in the spotlight and being picked apart on the world stage. She talks about how people had it in for them, and how it's quite clear that it's because, at least partially because, they were the black first family. She also speaks about how she was written off essentially as an angry black woman. If it isn't obvious, loved Becoming, and I actually started it twice. So first I had a physical copy that I took out from the library, but then I had to take it back when I was only about a third, maybe 40% of the way into the book. But then my audiobook came through, so then I started again at the beginning because Michelle Obama herself narrates it. So yeah, I wanted her to tell me her story, basically. She talks about so many different things in her book, and she actually speaks about a moment specifically where the media took something she said during Barack's first campaign for the presidency and just completely twisted it. In this case specifically, she said, "For the first time in my adult life, I'm proud of my country," or this country. That's this section that they took and like honed in on, but she said more than that. They took what she said during a section of her speech and sort of whittled it down to, "For the first time in my adult life, I'm proud of this country," or my country. And basically what she was saying is that the response that they were having made her particularly proud of her country in this moment. The response to them, essentially. Yeah, obviously, like, the conservative media just took that little section, you know, "For the first time I'm proud of my country," whatever, and just ran with it. And people were saying, "Well, I've always been proud of my country." They just used it to fuel this belief that the Obamas had some kind of hidden agenda, you know, painted them as they're different from us, you know. With regards to her being painted as an angry black woman, Michelle Obama's like 5'9", 5'10", I think, and she speaks about how she was painted as too tall, too black, too masculine, too this, too that, you know, just like physically picked apart. She also talks about how stereotypes effectively trap people, specifically the angry black woman stereotype. Whenever a black woman basically gets passionate about something, she's written off as an angry black woman, and naturally being written off as an angry black woman will make you angry because what you're saying is being diminished and dismissed, and who doesn't want to be heard, you know? That's why it functions as a trap, because obviously you're upset being dismissed, and that would make any normal person angry, you know? But you're not allowed to be angry because you're black, and then you'll be labelled as an angry black woman. And what's particularly annoying is that the people who dismissed you as an angry black woman feel some sort of vindication at being proven right by you being angry, but they don't see that your response is a direct response to how they've treated you, you know? So that's what's really jarring, but obviously Michelle Obama articulates it very well in the book. These kinds of people never see the role that they've played in an outcome, and of course a major factor of the way she and Barack were treated in the run-up to him assuming I don't know if that's a word, but of course the way she and Barack were treated was massively because of their race. Like, duh. Anybody who tries to say otherwise, it's just about the politics. Come on. Really, really outlandish rumours were created surrounding Barack Obama, like him supposedly being a Muslim, him not being born in Hawaii, which would mean that he's not eligible to campaign for the presidency. Just loads of things that just don't make sense. And of course, you know, the current president had a hand in fueling those rumours, like around the time as well that Barack was campaigning for his second presidency. When have you ever heard of these kind of things surrounding presidents before him? But with all of that being said, like, it really isn't a story about Barack Obama. Naturally, Barack Obama is featured in Michelle Obama's autobiography because he's her husband, like, duh. But it really is a story about Michelle herself, and I mean, it should be, it's her story. I just really love the insight that we're given. It's really cool because we get to see and understand why she pursued certain initiatives during the time that they had in the White House, like her garden, for example. She talks about how people sort of saw her garden as, you know, like a little project, like they didn't see initially what the garden represented. What she was trying to do was promote this whole healthy eating thing, but I think some people tried to write it off as just a little garden, you know? I loved the story. I really enjoyed it. I feel like I'm not really one to reread autobiographies, but I feel like there's a chance that I will revisit Becoming in the future. So far, it's my favourite book that I've read this year. It is only April, but I would say with confidence that Becoming will be in my like top 5 or top 10 or whatever at the end of the year. Like, if you're a fan of Michelle Obama, you should definitely read it. One thing that is kind of a shame, I think, is that because of certain political beliefs, I guess people will not pick up this book. The thing about this book is that it's not actually political. Like, obviously it features politics. Her husband was the president of the United States. Like, it's gonna feature some politics, but it's really not about politics. You should read it. 10 out of 10 would 100% recommend. That's the end of this video. I don't know that I'm gonna do another recent reads. I'm gonna try and do an April reading wrap up, but we'll see how it goes, because I kind of like doing them monthly because then I can remember what I've read a little bit better, but then the whole monthly thing is kind of restrictive in a way, but whatever, you don't need to know about all of that. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. There should be a button somewhere over here for you to do so. And there should also be some suggestions of other content that I have filmed popping up on the screen here, and over in this corner as well. I don't just do book related videos on this channel. I also do chatty get ready with me's, some hauls, some reviews, you know, things of that nature. And one of my most recent videos is actually me talking about how I am, I guess, dealing and processing with this current situation that we are all in right now. If that interests you, check that out after you're done here maybe. Yeah, that is everything, and I will see you in my next video. Bye. Ouch, ouch, ouch. I just really love the insight. Oh, is that my knee?